How do you kill the patriarchy? Do you fight it? Do you smash it? Or do you just starve it? Watch this.
Misogyny is the most stealth egregore in the world. An egregore is a collective thought form. It's part of the field of consciousness. It has its own energy force, and it's often strong enough to operate unnoticed and unquestioned. It's a pattern that stays alive because it's repeated, normalized, and emotionally reinforced. No one has to consciously agree to it. If enough people live it, it runs. The most powerful egregores aren't loud or violent. They're very familiar. They feel like common sense. They just feel like the way things are. Misogyny doesn't usually show up as hatred. It shows up as expectations. Girls are taught to be visible for men, but invisible for themselves. Male discomfort is treated like a crisis. Female discomfort is treated like an annoyance. So women learn early to accommodate before they even know what they're doing.
She's describing an egregore. It's an old occult concept, but it describes a very modern psychological reality. An egregore is a thought form, a distinct entity that exists only as long as a group of people collectively feed it energy. When you stop feeding a fire, it dies. But an egregore is trickier. It lives on belief. It lives on reaction. It lives on the specific emotional energy we spend trying to navigate it. We usually talk about patriarchy as a set of laws, or a glass ceiling, or a collection of bad men. But those are just the symptoms. The disease is the ghost that we keep alive by haunting ourselves. We've spent decades trying to shout this system down. We've tried to argue it into submission. We've tried to outperform it. Today, I want to ask a different question, a quieter question. What happens if we simply stop feeding it? Before we get started, you know what to do. Love or hate, like and share, because the algorithm does not care. Imagine two young fish swimming along, and an older fish says, "Good morning. How's the water?" The two young fish swim on for a bit until one looks at the other and says, "What the hell is water?" Patriarchy is the water. We are the fish. When we think about patriarchy as a stealth egregore, as that creator says, we stop looking for individual villains and we start looking at the atmosphere. The egregore survives because it has normalized itself as common sense. It has convinced us that social conditioning is actually just biology or nature. Its primary enforcement mechanism is misogyny. We need to define misogyny here, because misogyny is not just hating women. That's too simple. Misogyny is the electric fence. It is the shock that you receive when you step out of the role that patriarchy has designed for you. When a woman is loud, she is shamed. Shock. When she's ambitious, she's difficult. Shock. When she is aging, she is invisible. Shock. Over time, you stop needing the electric fence. You learn where their perimeter is, and you start policing yourself. You develop an internal cop, a voice in your head that asks, am I too much? Am I too loud? Ugh, do I look tired? Is all this my fault? But that voice isn't really yours. That's the egregore. It's the ventriloquist, and you're the dummy. We aren't born asking, what's wrong with me? We are trained to ask that question so that we never get around to asking, what is wrong with this system? As long as women are busy fixing ourselves, the system remains intact. It stays safe. If we're exhausted by constant self-regulation, the egregore stays fed. So, how do we starve it? I see three key ways to starve patriarchy. Number one, we need to withdraw the self-audit. Patriarchy feeds on women interpreting structural harm as personal failure. If women keep asking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make this work? Why am I not enough? The system never has to explain itself. But when you stop psychologizing systemic harm, you stop treating exhaustion, dissatisfaction, or ambivalence as moral defects. You recognize that many personal issues are actually predictable outcomes of unequal systems. There's a shift. It's a reassignment of causality. Once women stop internalizing failure, patriarchy loses one of its most efficient enforcement tools, self-policing. The philosopher Michael Foucault described the panopticon, a prison where inmates can see each other, but they can never see the guards. So they assume that the guard is always watching. Eventually, the guard doesn't even need to be there. The inmates watch themselves. Women are born into a panopticon. We constantly scan ourselves through a hypothetical male lens. This is the internalized version of the male gaze. Think about the last time you sent a professional email. Did you add an exclamation point at the end so that you wouldn't sound too bitchy? Did you soften your request with, well, I was just wondering if... That microsecond of hesitation, that is you feeding the egregore. The starvation method is not to fight that urge, because fighting the system is still engaging with it. The method is to witness the urge and then do nothing. When you feel the need to apologize for taking up space in the grocery aisle, notice it and then don't apologize. When you feel the need to fix your face because you aren't smiling, notice it. And then stay neutral and keep it moving. You starve the system by refusing to audit your own existence. You become a bad inmate. You stop watching yourself and you stop watching others. No system survives long when the people that it exploits stop blaming themselves for the exploitation. Method number 2, refuse the role of the shock absorber. This is about emotional energy. Misogyny doesn't run on hatred alone. It runs on women doing the emotional maintenance of the system. I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. When a man in your vicinity, your boss, a father, a partner, when that man gets angry or quiet or tense, what happens to your body? Do you tighten up? Do you immediately scan the room for ways to fix it? Do you try to soothe him or de-escalate the situation, even if you didn't cause it? Women are conditioned to be the emotional shock absorbers in patriarchy. We absorb the tension so men don't have to manage their own emotions. This is free emotional labor. Patriarchy needs women to translate, reassure, accommodate, normalize. It expects us to soothe male fragility, explain sexism patiently, soften our boundaries just to avoid conflict, absorb discomfort so that others don't have to feel it, and manage men's emotions as a prerequisite for receiving basic respect. To starve the egregore, you simply decline the invitation to manage the crisis that you didn't create. If he's angry, let him be angry. If he's uncomfortable, let him be uncomfortable. If there is an awkward silence because you set a boundary, let the silence sit there. Don't rush to fill it. Do not metabolize his emotions for him. Let his feelings be his problem, not yours. By refusing to carry the weight, you force him to carry it. When women stop doing the emotional work that keeps patriarchal norms socially functional, those norms begin to feel brittle, awkward, and exposed. Method number 3, decenter the invisible jury. Patriarchy survives because people still measure themselves using its scorecard. That scorecard includes male approval, romantic validation, sexual desirability, sacrificial femininity, good woman morality, productivity under exploitative conditions. As long as those metrics feel real, patriarchy retains authority, even when people intellectually reject it. We are trained to view male approval as objective truth and female approval as subjective bias. If a woman compliments your work, it's nice. If a man compliments your work, it's valid. If a man is uninterested in you, it feels like a failure. If a woman is uninterested, well, that's just a preference. Think about books, films, TV shows, or musicians that have primarily female audiences. They're seen as less serious, less valuable, less culturally important, even when they are commercially dominant, artistically influential, or historically enduring. The movie Titanic, for example, is one of the most commercially successful and culturally enduring films in history, combining technical innovation, historical spectacle, and a romance centered on female desire, memory, and loss. And it was directed by a guy who's known for these very sort of masculine action movies. This is the same guy who did Terminator. And yet, despite winning multiple Academy Awards and redefining the modern blockbuster, it is routinely dismissed, especially by men, as a chick flick or an exercise in melodrama. The belittlement rarely targets its craft. Instead, it mocks the emotional investment of its largely female audience, treating women's grief and attachment as unserious, rather than as legitimate narrative engagement. That film was just technically amazing. It was beautifully photographed, and the special effects, especially for the time, were groundbreaking. Netflix's Bridgerton is one of the platform's most watched series of all time, and has had a measurable impact on period drama, fashion, music, and casting conventions. By centering romance, intimacy, and women's interior lives, while deliberately blending historical aesthetics with modern sensibilities, it brought female desire into mainstream prestige television. Yet it is frequently trivialized as shallow or even pornographic, with critics using its popularity among women as evidence against its seriousness rather than engaging with the narrative choices or cultural influence. Diana Gabaldon's Outlander is a long-running, best-selling series that merges historical fiction, romance, political history, and time travel, supported by a highly successful television adaptation and a devoted global readership. Thanks to the television series, Scottish tourism has increased dramatically since the series premiered in 2014. It grapples with war, empire, gendered violence, and survival, usually through the embodied experiences of a female protagonist. Nevertheless, it is persistently reduced to jokes about women's fantasy or mom porn, a dismissal that sidelines its historical depth and reinforces the cultural habit of devaluing stories that center women's desire and perspective. The Egregore survives because we treat the male perspective as the highest court of appeal. To starve it, we have to stop granting it final authority. And you don't have to hate men to do this. Contrary to popular belief, most feminists don't hate men. Some feminists do. You just have to realize that their approval is not the gold standard of reality. It's just data. Think of it as a random Yelp review. Like, who cares? 2 stars. Too masculine. The egregore collapses the moment patriarchal approval stops determining self-worth. You decenter the invisible jury of patriarchy when you stop organizing your life around being chosen, being validated, or being admired by patriarchal standards. You stop treating male desire as evidence of worth. You stop assuming that suffering is virtuous, meaningful, or noble. When people no longer want what patriarchy has to offer, it has nothing left to bargain with. Here's the hardest part. Starving the patriarchy doesn't look like the plot of a great movie. It doesn't look like a protest or a witty comeback or reading a bitch on TikTok. It looks like nothing. It looks like a woman letting an awkward silence stretch out forever. It looks like a woman sending a direct email and then closing her laptop without worrying about it for the rest of the day. It also looks like a woman ignoring insults about her desirability and just moving the fuck on.
This woman asked this question, and I think that it is valuable for us to examine. She says, why do some men act like unattractive women personally offend them? Before we even examine her post, I believe that these dudes believe that women were put here for them, for their entertainment, like some dolls that they can pick up and put down. Like we've already talked about the wife appliance, bane maids, incubators. Women are put here to serve men. And when you are unattractive and they don't want you, how dare you even be in their presence? Some men think women are toys for men to play with. That's why they get so angry when a woman turns them down. A toy doesn't get to say who can play with it. That's why they can get violent if a woman doesn't want to do a particular sex act. A toy doesn't get to say how it's played with. For a man like that, an unattractive woman is a toy he doesn't want to play with. He is the center of the universe. Everything should be done for him. What idiot left this ugly toy in his playroom? If the only way you interact with a group of people is to imagine having sex with them, then almost by definition, you will feel disgust for all of the people in the group that you find ugly. You're likely to feel moral contempt for the person who caused you disgust.
Starving patriarchy is quiet, often invisible, misinterpreted as apathy or selfishness, and emotionally destabilizing for the system, but not for you. And this is already starting to happen because notice with the birth rate conversation, what's the primary accusation against women for not having children? We're selfish.
She has a brand where she talks about childlessness. That particular woman that you just looked at is a selfish bitch, and men should not marry her.
See? Patriarchy collapses when fewer and fewer people are willing to carry it, explain it, justify it, or mistake it for reality. That's how egregores die. When Katharine Hepburn said, "Never complain, never explain," this is what she meant. Not complaining is a rejection of the posture of grievance when you're trying to work within a system that's not going to change in response. There's no point in complaining. Hepburn understood that complaint rarely invites respect and rarely produces any real leverage. In her view, complaining drains energy that could be used to act or just to exit. She believed that explaining yourself places others in a position to judge you. Once you explain, you've accepted their right to evaluate, approve, or dismiss your choices. Starving patriarchy feels boring. It feels quiet. And at first, it feels terrifying. But systems do not always collapse with a bang. Sometimes they collapse simply because we stopped believing in them, stopped organizing our lives around them. and just left them to wither. If we want the beast to die, we have to stop feeding it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. If you enjoy this kind of content, I invite you to watch my series, Witches, Whores, and Rebels, a feminist history of patriarchal capitalism and how to burn it down. It's a 3-part series with a 90-page companion guide that gives you the history of how we got here, centering the witch hunts, women's resistance, and providing a framework for how we move forward from here. The link is in the description when you're ready.